So today I'm going to talk to you about functional behavior assessments. You are going to turn in the FBA portion of the BIP. This is just the very beginning, and so the BIP will be, which is the midterm, will be halfway through before you even get to the midterm. So that's really cool. The first thing you're going to do is you are going to interview the teacher of the student, and you are going to ask her. You're going to ask her him or her some questions. Now, the teacher in this case might actually be you, so you're really interviewing yourself. You may want to choose a different teacher if the behavior is happening maybe like in a different class. So Sam is tardy often. He's tardy 3 times per week in first period is what she says. The behavior lasts, it occurs when he's 5 to 15 minutes late, generally at about 8 o'clock in the morning. How disruptive or dangerous is the problem behavior? Well, it's not very dangerous, but he is missing a lot of instruction. So when and where and with whom are problem behaviors most likely is what you're going to ask them next. And she has told us that it is at 8 a.m. for her English class because it's first period and it happens. She thinks it's a high incidence. He's probably tardy more often than he's not. And so she wants to say it's 6, but has decided that maybe it was just 5. Because, like one day every couple of weeks he's on time. And then she sees it again in math class. And she's not the math teacher, but she's looked online and the math teacher is seeing the same thing, and it's happening pretty regularly. That's Mr. Geometry. Mr. World has marked him tardy, and that's a 1 p.m. class, so it might be like right after lunch or something. And then Mr. Science has marked him tardy, and that's like second period after encore, and it was 10 a.m. in the morning. It hasn't happened but once, so it's probably not as likely that it's going to happen. It's not happening in any of the other classes. So, and I would probably write out each of the classes and maybe make it a 1 on each of them and then put their names there too. All 8 of his classes. Up here, don't forget that we need to make sure that we say what the kid's strength is. So for Sam, he's very popular. He's well liked by his peers. And he enjoys making jokes, and he has got a very well-developed sense of humor. He's a great kid. He, really wonderful. He's just tardy a lot. Now, tardy is not something that I would usually write a functional behavior assessment over, but I figured that was the easiest for you to see the process here. So the next thing you're going to talk to her about is the antecedent. Now, remember, that is what happens before the tardy happens, the things that are leading up to the tardy. So what situation seems to set off the problem? And it tends to be she says it's a transition of structured time at home, unstructured time at home, to the structured time at school. And it usually happens in the morning when school starts and is worse at the beginning of a week, like on Mondays. When is the problem behavior least likely to occur? And she says last period of the day, it never happens. And then she thinks, you're asking them then, what do you think might be the issue? Are there specific conditions, events, or activities that make the problem behavior worse? And she says a lack of sleep does it, and after the weekend, mostly on Monday. So that was back up here. What usually happens after the behavior occurs? He feels bad. She can tell that he feels bad. He's unhappy. He has to go to the office to go get an admit. He gets a 0 on the first assignment, or he has to make up the work and do it over again in his own time. And then other students have started teasing him about it, and he seems depressed in the morning when he comes into class. She wants to propose, we're going to ask her to propose a testable explanation, and she's going to say the event happens at home. The antecedent, it's getting up. When he's supposed to be getting up. And then he's going to come to school late after the bell. And then the consequence is that he's going to have to do makeup work, teasing, and zeros. But what she doesn't mention is that he's also getting to play longer at night on his video game machine. Now, she doesn't know this. So she can't really, this is not something I would write right here, right? She's not there at home, so she has no idea. We think that the function of the behavior, we think it's to escape undesirable activity, which is to sleep. And we think that there's also a positive reinforcement because he gets to play video games longer instead of sleeping. How confident are you that this is the explanation? And she said 6, very confident. On the student profile here, you're going to now go and interview the student. And so he's going to say, I really love PE, lunch, and my ag classes, because we've asked, what do you like to do that is fun at school? And he says, and I like helping others and making them laugh. And then what are some things that you get to do that get you into trouble? He says, well, I get in trouble for tardies. And then you ask, well, how often do you come to school late? And he says, about one time a week. And then how long does it take to get to the school? How long does the tardy last? How much are you tardy? It says usually about 15 minutes after the bell. And then you ask, how serious are the tardies? And he says, well, my brother drives me to school, so we are both tardy, and it causes us to fight a lot. So there's also an argument going on between his brother and he, who's been driving him to school. And then he says, well, 7:45, my alarm goes off. We're already seeing some red flags. I roll out of bed and realize I'm late. With whom does the problem occur? With my family, by myself in my bedroom. And it happens. He doesn't think it happens as often as it does. He marks it medium. And he says the specific problem is that I'm late getting up. So that's where the big issue is. And then he says, well, then you say, what do you think what kind of things makes it more likely that you'll have this problem? He says, well, if it's, the weekend and we're turning into Monday and my laundry isn't done, I'm more likely to be late. And he says, where's the problem most likely to happen? Well, it's usually Monday, 1st and 5th period, which are the first periods of the day that start at 8. When is the problem least likely to occur? He says Wednesdays, and it never happens 4th and 8th period. So is there anything that happens before, after school, or in between classes that makes it more likely that you'll have the problem or that you'll be tardy? And so they say, yes, if the laundry isn't done, or if it's cold outside, and if I played a really great game and beat levels the night before. And so what usually happens after the problem occurs? He says the teacher's disappointed and frowns. The kids are teasing me and I get embarrassed and I have to get an admin and everyone is annoyed at me. So that is what happens after the problem occurs. So that's the end of the second interview that you've done. And then you're going to look at step 2. And step 2 is coming up with a testable explanation. This one's really obvious. The setting or event is, he's staying up late, and then he doesn't get up in the morning, and so then he's late to school, and the consequence is that he gets in trouble. But his consequence, like we said, is also that he got to stay up late the night before playing his game and got rewarded by winning lots of levels. So there's some reinforcement there of something we don't want happening. So for each ABC sequence listed above, why do you think the behavior is occurring? And I'm going to say because he is reinforced by the game, the lack of structure, and that it's not his preferred sleep and coming to school on time is not the preferred activity. The preferred activity is playing a video game. Rate your confidence in the testable explanation. Are you sure that's what's happening in the settings? We're not completely sure the setting events because we're not there. So we're having to listen to what the kid says and what the teacher says, and the teacher's not really there either. So this one is going to be, we're not as confident with this one probably. As far as antecedents go, sounds pretty reasonable. Behaviors, we know, we're very sure that it's an issue because both the teachers mentioned it and the kid, and it's not just in one teacher's room, it's like in several of them. And then the consequences are, we're not exactly sure on that either, but probably a 3 or 4. And the function, we're in the same place, because he hasn't mentioned, he hasn't given us fact, but we've got some hunches. Step 4 is conducting the observation. So you're going to go to the classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if the student has identified a disability as at risk of suspension, expulsion, or change in placement, you must conduct an observation of the student. If the student does not meet above criteria, but confidence rating is 1, 2, 3, or 4, you should conduct observations to better understand when, where, and why the problem is behavior is occurring. And if a student does not meet above criteria and confidence rating is a 5 or 6, you may go directly to step 6. So we're going to go ahead and do the observations, and we're gonna do it at 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. We're going to do it at 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. We're going to do it at 8 o'clock in the morning the following Monday. And there's going to be some dates here. And so we come to class, and he's tardy, and he's not tardy on this day, and he's tardy on this day. For each ABC sequence listed above, why do you think the behavior is occurring? And we think it's because he's not getting enough sleep, because he's staying up too late playing on his video games. And you're going to ask him on that day, he came in late on this day, what happened Sunday night? And he's going to tell you. What happened Monday morning? And he's going to tell you. And that's going to be your setting, your event that caused the tardy, and what you can write out what the consequences were. But I want you to remember that sometimes the consequences are also the positive things that he's gotten from this. Step 5, you're not going to do this part. This is as far as you're going to go for your for this part, this part that you're going to submit to me, because I'm going to call you this weekend or this week sometime, and we're going to talk about your case study, and we're going to see what we can use in order to collect the data and to set up the goal. And I'm going to help you through that. You're not going to have to do that by yourself, but I'm going to have to do each one of you different, individually, because each of your students has a different behavior. So we're going to visit about that at that point.